Hello, Grace Scholars. It is good to have you back to our series in the study of music for our class. I hope you are well prepared to learn and get the best out of this particular class. So let's begin. Imagine you leaving one academic level to another. You just know that every of such level has its unique challenge you have to face, which obviously is different from others. You have been in a class and now you are in a new class. You know, what you are going to be taught now is a little bit different, and that is how it is. In this lesson, we are looking at the topic major scales and its degrees. Major scales and its degrees. And I want us to know that every major scale has a guiding principle or pattern that helps in arranging the notes on the staff. And the construction of any of these scale is very vital to the understanding of the major scale, and it affects the understanding of other keys, which we shall be looking at later in the course. So we are going to concentrate on the degree of the major scale, the primary notes of the major scale, the notes pattern on the piano, and finally we just look at some evaluation questions to assess how much we have understood the lesson. Now let's look at the degree of the major scale. The degree of the major scale, and our focus is more on the technical names of the scale. By definition, the degree of the major scale is the position of the notes of the scale on the staff in relation to the tonic, which is the first note. Okay, the notes are arranged when we are constructing the scale. We place the notes on the staff. All the notes that form that scale are arranged one after the other, and from the very first note to the octave. Now, in relation to the tonic, because the tonic is the first note, and they are referred to by their technical names, and equally their numerical identity, which is the position they occupy in that scale. That is their numerical identity. You know, some can be the first, we have the second, we have the third note, we have the fourth note, we have the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and thereafter the octave, which is actually a repetition of the very first note or the tonic. Now, these three parameters of identifying the major scale, the degree of the major scale, we are going to be using them interchangeably in the study of this lesson. Now, there is an example for us. You observe that sometimes, even in the degree of the major scale, we use the solfas to study the degree. The first degree followed by the second, which is higher than the first, the third. As you are going higher, that is how the sound, the pitch of each of the degree is higher. So usually for the major scale, the tonic solfas will be do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Okay, that is in the ascending order. While in the descending order we have do, ti, la, so, fa, mi, re, do. So these are the way we can use the tonic solfas to show the degree of the major scale. But I want us to know in this class that we are very particular about mastering the three mode of identifying the degree of the major scale, either through the technical name or the numerical identity or through the tonic solfas. Now, the very first degree of the major scale, the very first note of that scale, the technical name is called the tonic. It's called the tonic. Sometimes it's referred to as the root note, but it's referred to as the tonic. That is the technical name. While the second note of the degree is called the supertonic. Supertonic actually means that it is higher than the tonic. That's why it's referred to as the supertonic. Okay, then the third degree is called the mediant. The mediant. Okay, in subsequent classes I'll take time to explain why it has to be called the median, because if we're going to look at that, we will now have to look into breaking the scale into two, and then you'll see how it came about. But for this class, for the sake of this class, just take it that the third degree of the scale is called the median. The fourth degree of the scale is called the subdominant. It's called the subdominant. It's called the subdominant. That's the fourth degree. Remember, we are using the C major scale. It can be applied to every other kind of scale as long as it's a major scale. The sixth degree of the scale is called the fifth degree. I beg your pardon. The fifth degree of the scale is called the dominant. The dominant is the fifth degree of the scale. Okay, so when you now know that the fifth degree is dominant and then the fourth is subdominant, I think that should be easy for you to understand, because the fourth now is below the fifth, so it's the sub. Now, the sixth degree is called the submediant. It's called the submediant. The mediant and the submediant have a kind of relationship, but we'll not look at that in this lesson. So the sixth degree is called the submediant. The seventh degree is called the leading note. It's called the leading note. Actually, the leading note is leading us to the octave, which is the eighth degree of the major scale. So these are the technical names of the major scale. Now take note also that the first degree and the eighth degree, they are actually the same pitch. They're actually the same name, I beg your pardon, but of different pitch. Okay, that shows that if you are to find out the number of notes that make up the scale, you observe that they're actually 7, because the first degree is repeated in the eighth degree. So that is why you have it represented that way, because you're having two notes, one as the tonic, the other as the octave. The difference is that their pitches are not the same. The octave is always higher than the tonic of every degree of the scale. Now we want to look into the ascending and descending order of the scale, and in this section we are going to look at the C major scale, the F major scale, and the G major scale. Now, of course, as the name implies, the degree of the scale, for the C, it starts from C, D, E, F, and then G, A, B, C. So we have it in that order. We don't skip any line or space when we are using the notes, and we are very free to use any notes that we are convenient with. And also take note that in the descending order, where you now descend from the octave now down to the tonic, it is the reverse of the position of the notes of the ascending order. Note that in the construction of the major scale, the semitone occurs between the third and the fourth note, and between the seventh and the eighth note of the scale. Because we are using the C major scale in this very first example, you observe that we do not make use of any of the accidentals, because naturally for the C major scale, between the E and F, which is the third and fourth, and between the B and C, which is the seventh and eighth note, is a semitone. So it's very clear that between those notes, and there is no need for any accidental. So on the keyboard, you will observe that between the E and F and between the B and C is a semitone. And like I said, the tonic and the octave, they are related, and one is just the octave of the other. So in taking note of the notes that make up the scale, we don't need to repeat it by counting it twice. Okay, that is we have looked at C. Now let's look into that of F major. For F major, we know that it's going to start from F, and then we go again from line to space until we get to the octave, and thereafter we descend again. As in the case of C major, the first note and the octave, they are the same, except that the octave is higher. And we notice in F major also that between the third and the fourth note, which is between A and B, is a tone, and we have to make it a semitone. That means we have to reduce the distance between A to B. Since we are in A, we have to drop down B by a semitone, and that means that it will now be from A to B flat. That will now give us a semitone. So that's how the semitone came about in F major, while the second semitone is between the 7th and the 8th note, which is between E and F. That is naturally a semitone. So for that of F major, then we have it between the third and the fourth, between A and B flat is a semitone, between A and F is a semitone. Let's go to the third one, which is the G major scale. The G major scale is a scale that uses one sharp, and the sharp is placed on F. And in the ascending order again, we start from G, we end in G. If we are descending, we come down from G, the octave G, and we come to the lower G. As in the case with C and F, the first, the tonic and the octave, they are the same. Let's take note, except in pitch. And thereafter, we notice that the sharp this time is on F. Remember, in the same vein, between the third and the fourth is a semitone, which is between B and C. But between the 7th and the 8th, if we do not place a sharp there, that will be between F and G. Between F and G, that is a tone. But we needed to make it a semitone, so that is why E to F sharp will now give us a tone, while F sharp to G will give us a semitone. Remember, the pattern of the major scale is tone to semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Now we want to look at the primary notes of the major scale. The notes of the degree of the major scale can be classified into primary and secondary notes of the scale. The primary notes of the scale are the 1st degree, the 4th degree, and the 5th degree of that scale. So whatever note that is in the 1st degree, and the 4th, and the 5th, they form the primary note of every scale, while all other degrees now make up the secondary notes of the scale. Secondary notes will therefore be the 2nd degree, the 3rd degree, the 6th degree, the 7th degree, and those ones form the secondary notes of the scale. For the 1st degree, the tonic surface is represented as Do, while the 4th degree, the tonic surface will be Fa, the 5th degree, the tonic surface will be So. All others are regarded as secondary notes of the scale. So let's take note. Subsequently, the technical name of the primary note of the scale will be tonic, the subdominant, and the dominant of the scale. However, this rule must be applied on every major scale, or must be applied on every major scale only. An example of the primary note of C major and F major is what we are going to be looking at. The first note of the scale takes its position from the name of the scale on the staff. Now, if you look at the C major scale we have here, the first note there is C, because it's C major, while the 4th is F. The note is on F because we are looking at the primary note, and the 5th is G. So we have the 1st is C, the 2nd is F, the 4th is F, the 5th is G. So that is 1, 4, 5. That is the primary note of the C major scale. Let's take a look. The first note is tonic, the 4th note is subdominant, the 5th note is the dominant. For the F major scale, we have it that the first note, which is the tonic, will be on F because it's F major. Remember that in F major scale, we use one flat, so that flat is going to be on the 4th note, and that will be B flat, because that is the 4th degree of the scale. The fifth degree will be C, and that will give us the fifth. So the first again is the tonic, the fourth the subdominant, and the fifth the dominant degree of the scale. Now for the G major scale, this is the scale that has only one sharp, and the sharp accidental is placed on line F. So then the tonic will be on G, which is the first. The subdominant will be on C, which is the fourth, and the dominant will be on D, which is the fifth. These again are the primary chords or the primary notes of G major. You will observe that the rule of knowing the primary notes are the same for every scale. So the rule is the same for every scale. If you know the scale and you can write out the notes that make up the scale, you can always get the primary notes. The primary note is on the first degree, on the fourth degree, and on the fifth degree of the scale. And the tonic surface of those primary notes, they are do, they are fa, and they are so. Okay, let's have a comparison. Let's look into comparison of C, the scale of C, the scale of F, and G major scale. Now, in looking at the degree of the scale, the C major, the semitones occurs between E and F and B and C for C major. For F major, the semitones occurs between A and B flat and between E and F, between the third and the fourth, and between the seventh and the eighth. For G major, the semitone occurs between B and C and F sharp and G. Now for the primary notes, let's see how it goes. For the very first C major, the primary note will be C, F, and G, the first, the fourth, and the fifth. And then for F major, the primary note will be F, B flat, and C. And for G major, the primary note will be C, G, C, and D. Take note that the C major scale has no sharp or flat accidentals, and the semitones occurs between E to F and between B and C. And for the F major, it has only one flat, and that flat is on B. And for G major, it has only one sharp, and that sharp is on F. It's F that is sharpened. So that brings us, before we go to the end of the class, but before we go, let's look at these evaluation questions which you are going to do. Take them down in your notes. Try them. Let me have them. I want to assess your ability. I want to believe that you have followed me throughout the course of this lesson. The first question says, list the technical names of the degrees of the scale. List the technical names of the degrees of the scale. While the second question says, what are the primary notes of the scale? What are the primary notes of the scale? What do you think are the primary notes of the scale? Let me have that. Number 3, what degree of the scale make up the secondary notes? What degrees of the scale make up the secondary notes? Number 4, on the C major scale, what notes form the primary notes? On the C major scale, what are the notes that form? You have to mention the pitch name of the notes that form the primary notes. And finally, which tonic surfer is the submediant of the major scale? Which tonic surfer is the submediant of the major scale? So that is all for our lesson, for our class. I want to believe you have followed me in this class. If you have any cause to go back again and play this tutorial over and over again, please do, so that at the time we are going to the next topic, you will be at an advantage to do well. See you next time, and bye bye.